The city breathes, a constant hum of a million different lives, all moving at once. It's a symphony of 1,000 stories, but most of them get lost in the noise. My story was one of them. For 16 years, I've lived in the heart of this beautiful chaos, surrounded by people yet feeling completely invisible. Everyone's in a rush, their eyes glued to screens, their ears plugged with headphones. They're all broadcasting their own lives, but is anyone really listening? I had a secret, something I carried around like a heavy stone in my pocket. I wrote lyrics, words that captured the rhythm of the rain on my window, the loneliness of a late-night train, the quiet hope of a sunrise over the skyscrapers. These weren't just words, they were pieces of me, but I kept them locked away in a worn-out notebook, hidden under my bed. Why? Fear. The crippling fear that if I shared them, people would laugh. That my voice, my real voice, wasn't good enough for this loud, judgmental world. So I chose silence. It felt safer. Every day was a battle inside my own head. A voice would whisper, "Show them. Let them hear you." But a louder, more convincing voice would shout back, "Don't be a fool. They don't care. Stay quiet. Stay safe." And I always listened to the louder voice. I'd walk through school, through the crowded streets, a ghost in my own life, my notebook feeling heavier with every unspoken word. I watched others talk, laugh, and share their passions so easily, and I wondered what was wrong with me. Why was it so hard to just speak? I was starting to believe that maybe I was meant to be a spectator, to just watch the world from the sidelines. Maybe my voice didn't have a place here after all. I'd sit by my window at night, watching the city lights blur together, feeling my own dreams blur along with them. The silence was becoming deafening, a constant reminder of the person I was too afraid to be. The weight of it all was crushing me, and I didn't know how much longer I could carry it. One evening everything changed. I was walking home, my head down as usual, trying to block out the world. The city was at its peak rush hour, a torrent of honking cars, hurried footsteps, and distant sirens. Then I heard it, a sound that cut through the noise. It wasn't loud or polished, but it was real. On a street corner, a boy about my age stood with a beat-up guitar. He was singing. His voice wasn't perfect, it cracked a little, but it was filled with so much passion, so much heart. People rushed past him, barely giving him a glance. A few dropped coins into his open guitar case without breaking their stride, more out of habit than appreciation. But he didn't seem to notice or care. He was completely lost in his music, his eyes closed, singing as if he were performing to a sold-out stadium. He wasn't singing for them. He was singing for himself. Something inside me shifted. I stopped walking. For the first time in a long time, I was truly listening. I stood there until his song ended. He opened his eyes, a small smile on his face, and he saw me. Just me. The one person who had stopped. I felt a nervous energy bubble up inside me, but I had to talk to him. I walked over, my heart pounding. I stammered something about his song being good, about how he wasn't bothered that nobody was listening. He just shrugged and smiled. "I listen," he said, tapping his chest. "That's where it starts. No one will hear you if you don't hear yourself first." That sentence hit me like a lightning bolt. No one will hear you if you don't hear yourself first. I repeated it over and over in my head all the way home. For years I had been waiting for the world to give me permission to speak, to validate my voice. But he was right. I hadn't even given myself that permission. I had been silencing myself more than anyone else ever could. That night, I didn't just go to bed. I took out my notebook, and for the first time I read my words out loud to the empty room. They were clumsy and shaky, but they were mine, and I was finally hearing them. The next morning I walked into school and saw a flyer for the annual talent show. My first instinct was to walk right past it, just like I always did, but his words echoed in my mind. "Hear yourself first." My hands trembled as I took a pen and signed my name. Not to sing. I wasn't ready for that. But to read, to share my lyrics. The moment I wrote my name down, a wave of terror washed over me. But it was followed by a strange, exhilarating calm. I had made a choice. I was done being silent. The day of the talent show felt surreal. Backstage, the air was thick with nervous energy and the smell of hairspray. I could hear the muffled sound of the audience, the laughter, the applause for other acts. My heart was a drum solo against my ribs. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to go back to the safety of my silence. But then I thought about the boy on the street corner. I thought about the feeling of finally hearing my own words. I clutched my notebook so tightly my knuckles turned white. This was it. And now, Eunice, with some spoken word poetry. My name echoed through the speakers, and it felt like a summons. I walked onto the stage, my legs feeling like jelly. The stage lights were blinding, and all I could see was a dark sea of faces. A hush fell over the auditorium. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the paper steady. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The silence stretched on, and I could feel a few whispers ripple through the crowd. My worst fears were coming true, but then I closed my eyes, and I heard his voice again. Hear yourself first. I took a deep breath, just one, and I started. My voice was a fragile whisper at first, cracking and unsteady. The city sleeps, but I'm awake. The words felt small and naked in the huge auditorium. I kept my eyes on the page, not daring to look up. But as I continued, something shifted. I wasn't just reading anymore. I was feeling. The rhythm of the words, the pulse of the story, it took over. My voice grew stronger, more confident. I forgot about the audience, the lights, the fear. It was just me and my words, the way it was in my room. But this time I wasn't alone. I was sharing a piece of my soul. I looked up for the first time and saw them. Not a faceless mob, but individuals. Some were leaning forward, some were nodding slowly. Some had smiles on their faces. They were listening. They were actually listening. When I read my final line, a different kind of silence filled the room. Not an empty one, but one full of weight, of thought. Then the applause started. It wasn't a thunderous roar, but it was warm and genuine. It washed over me, and in that moment, I felt a release. I didn't win first place. I didn't get a standing ovation. But as I walked off that stage, I felt like I had won something much bigger. I had faced my greatest fear, and I had survived. More than that, I had found my voice. Not just the one in my throat, but the one in my heart. I finally felt seen, not for being perfect, but for being real. The world doesn't need more perfect voices, polished and flawless. It has plenty of those. What it really needs, what it's desperate for, are hearts brave enough to speak. Your voice, with all its cracks and imperfections, has a place. It deserves to be heard. So don't wait for permission. Hear yourself first, because your story matters, and there's someone out there who needs to hear it. Trust me. Thank you for watching.